Thank you for joining us for this wonderful episode of Royals, Rebels, and Romantics when Laura and Kathryn join us to discuss their wonderful book, Twas the Night Before Tudor Christmas. Enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to a holiday edition of Royals, Rebels, and Romantics featuring one of mine. You can see we all have our copies here. 'Twas the Night Before Tudor Christmas, which is one of my new favorite holiday traditions. You know how much I love this book. And, I love Christmas and I love the Tudors. So what could be better? And I am thrilled to be joined by the two brilliant minds who bring us this book. So Laura and Katie are both with us. So I'm just going to ask them to each introduce themselves and tell us just a little bit about you and what you enjoy doing, maybe something you're doing for the holidays this year. So, Katie, you're I go alphabetically, A before L,
Yeah. My name is Katie Holeman. Professionally, I go by Kathryn, but my friends call me Katie, as you all are my friends. I'm an illustrator. I started off doing Tudor themed art about, I would say, almost 15 years ago at this point. And it was sort of a hobby, and then it kind of grew and grew, especially as the Tudor kind of community feels like it grew quite a bit. More people talked about it. Everyone was sort of getting together on social media about it. So yeah, over the years, I've just sort of made that my focus. I do other kinds of art too, book related, literary themed, but I always go back to the Tudors because how can you not? So for the holidays, it is coming fast and I haven't started shopping yet. I'm going to be one of those last minute people this year, but I love it. Like I kind of love packing it all in. I'm going to start baking. I'm decorating now. Like I've got some stuff out. It really kickstarts next week when I see my family for Thanksgiving, and then all the movies, everything starts. So it'll be exciting, but kind of fast this year, I think.
Great. Yes, it always seems to come upon us fast.
Yeah.
Okay, Laura, tell us a little bit about you and how you came to this great book and everything.
Well, I have always been a bit of a history person to be. I was that kid that just used to love going to pioneer villages because that's what we had in Canada. You don't have the beautiful castles, but anywhere I could get my hands on history, I was on it. And also cookbooks. I used to carry those around too. Anyway, so you can kind of see where I'm going with this. And very creative, love to draw, love to anything artsy. I'm all over it. So I have a background in communications, but then for the last, 13 years, I've been a mom. And so I love doing lots of fun things with kids and different things like that. And I love throwing big parties. And actually, that's funny because with our Christmas traditions now include, I have my daughter's December birthday. So we get to do birthday with the Christmas tree. And I swear one of these years I'm going to put balloons all over it because you have to kind of, she loves this. She loves every holiday too. And we all do. So we kind of just go all out. Yeah. So excited, but I am a procrastinator too. So yeah.
Okay.
Too many ideas and that's not enough time to execute.
That happens to all of us, but you'll notice I do have a few. If I lean, you can see some of my decorations going up on my bookshelf behind me, and you can see the Six Wives. And then if I lean, you can see Henry and Anne over there as well. So the reason I've brought these two women together is because they are the author and illustrator, hold it the right way, of this great book. So I'm going to ask Laura first because the book includes different things, but I want to start with the story of the night before Tudor Christmas, because I remember you telling me that inspiration sort of just came to you. So tell us about that.
Well, you never do know what's going to pop in your head when you're cleaning. Yeah, so my mind is usually quite active. So if I'm doing a monotonous task, there's no accounting for for what's going to pop in there. And it just started to come in flowing. And I was, it was around, I think it was around the holidays. If it wasn't, then I'm even more eccentric than I thought. So, but Yeah, I started to hear it as a Tudor version of this poem because I know the poem very well. And it was coming, and I thought, oh, geez, I better stop what I'm doing and jot this down or I'm never going to remember it. And when I did, I started, and then, I got to about maybe a third of the way in. And I was like, oh, this is quite fun. I'm going to finish this. And I don't know where I'm going to go with it, but now I'm in it. I'm full in it. So I just sat down and I just finished writing it. And it did make a few changes here or there, but for the most part, it came out and I just had so much fun with it. I don't know.
Okay, so I'm going to ask if you would read just a little bit. We're going to look at the art in a minute, but for the beginning, can you just read a little bit of the poem with the Tudors in there and just kind of get us in the holiday spirit? And then we're going to look at some illustrations and some of the other things. But let's just hear the way you read it, because I always think the author reads things really well. So,
okay. No
yeah.
pressure.
No pressure. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try. There is an online version too, if anybody wants to put it on their TV or something like that. We do. My kids actually listen to it, so when you can see the visuals with it. But anyways, I had a few cups of coffee when I read that one. But I'm gonna cut that too. I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We will. We will.
Okay,
We'll just jump right around.
All right. Sorry. Let's read a little bit then. Okay. 'Twas the night before Christmas in a palace so grand, not a courtier was scheming by royal command. To hold up the pictures?
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Okay. That's great. And then we'll have Kathryn talk about creating them. But yeah, just read a little more and hold it up. That's perfect, Laura. Thanks.
The kissing bell was hung from the ceiling with love, unspoken promises of joy from above. The Tudors were warm in their lice-ridden beds, while visions of sugared nuts swirled in their heads. And Henry in his nightshirt and Anne in her gown quarreled over airs and fell asleep wearing frowns.
This is perfect because now Henry and Anne are in the story already.
A little Percoy in the bed, who
Yeah.
I love. Better Percoy in the bed than out the
Yes.
window. Oh dear. Okay,
Yes.
That's not very Christmassy. Yeah. When in the great hall there arose such a crash, Anne jumped out of the four-poster bed in a flash. Toward the hall she moved in an elegant prance, flung open the doors, scowled, but then started to dance. And this is my favorite picture here. I love this one. For what sight did her stunning dark eyes behold but a room set for a feast, sparkling with gold? The fire was alight and roaring with heat. After fasting for weeks, she could smell roasting meat.
See, so perfect.
Do you want me to keep going here?
Just do one more page, okay?
Okay, all right. With a look and a grin so lively and quick, Anne knew as queen she'd have the best pick. More festive than peacocks the courses would come. And Anne planned to praise them all, not just some. Now plum pottage, now boar's head, now deer and small game. More tarts, more citrus, more everything, she'd exclaim. The food on your trenchers and all the pies in the hall. Now devour, devour, devour it all.
Okay, that's perfect. I think that gives us a really nice flavor. And we all now need to go get the book if you don't already have it. But you can see that the traditional poem we know is just immersed in these wonderful Tudor details. And I asked Laura, and I'm going to ask Kathryn to talk about some of the details that come through the language and the illustration. So we have the caps that they would wear to bed, because in Tudor times, everyone wore a cap because of the lice, and the lice are mentioned in the bed. And they're arguing over an heir to the crown, and that's mentioned. So you can see that Laura has brought in some of these details of Henry and Anne's marriage and how, even though there's a little rumbling underneath, it's a very fun Christmas. Now, Kathryn, will you tell us how you decided, just in those pages that Laura read, so we'll just start with those, how you landed on some of the images you wanted to pull and put on the page?
Yeah. I think, Laura's writing is so fun and decorative in its own way that it was easy in a way for me to almost close my eyes and pick out the things that I could sort of visualize going along with it. But for example, the first page that opens it up, we decided, okay, what castle, what building are we going to draw? What makes sense for that time? And we decided that something looking like Greenwich Palace would make the most sense. Is that right?
Yeah, here, I'll hold it up. Yeah.
Is that Greenwich?
I think
Yeah,
so.
okay, we can count my
we looked at an awful lot of the palaces.
Yeah, but we decided, and this is based on that, on Greenwich Palace. And we've got the river there. And then in terms of, what did an actual kissing bow look like? We researched that. And even you mentioned the caps while they were sleeping. Even the bed frame is reminiscent of some of those Tudor bed frames. Researching what her dog really might have looked like, we looked at some sources and figured out what kind of dog it probably was. And then the way they're even laying down in bed. Remember, Laura, we talked about I couldn't figure out how to have them laying so you could see their faces, but you were like, it's fine because they would have been propped up.
Right, because the mattresses used to
Yes.
sag a
So
bit.
it was a perfect angle. Visually, I could draw them in bed. You could see their faces. And it was true, like true to the time. And then when she's jumping out of bed, well, of course she's not going to put on her, her gabled hood at that moment. But that's when the character descriptions come through. You want to have a recognizable character. There's things we see from Anne Boleyn through other sources that I thought, okay, this audience, we want to make sure they know who it is immediately. So, we put those things on her. And I thought she would be wearing red because it's a Christmas story, and Henry is wearing green throughout. And I sort of tried to balance out that. But because of that, that sort of dictated other things. And I have his shoes in the corner, and they're the wedge shoes, little details like that. But then the dancing through the hallway, that was one of my favorite pieces to draw because just the way it's written, she's prancing. And I pictured, oh my gosh, what if we had some real action, some movement, and she's just like a ballerina dancing. So just fun stuff like that. I like to pull what I visualize and try to put it on the paper so it matches the words, so it enhances the story in that way.
That's wonderful. And you can really see how the words and the images come together. And Katie, even though you make it sound like, oh, these action words and I can see it, I mean, I personally can't see it. So I really appreciate that about an artist who can see things from the words. So I'm going to hold up because Laura mentioned this is one of her favorite pictures. So the Great Hall, and many of us have seen a Great Hall, but the idea of the holidays in the Great Hall, that Christmas Day comes after, not like we've already started, in some households celebrating, but of course in Tudor times, they did not. They were fasting until that morning. So the idea that everything would be decked out that day, I mean, those details are so much fun. So I just want to thank you both for all of the research. I mean, it is, I hate to say this, everyone, but it is fictionalized a little bit. But even so, the details and the research that go into it are just wonderful. And so I did want to point that out.
Yeah. And even in that scene, I mean, we looked at the chairs, we looked at the kind of benches. We looked at, the Great Hall of Hampton Court Palace. We looked at the tapestries. We only used greenery. We tried to pull in those little bits that were true to the time.
Yeah. And that just really helps just lighten us up. Now, there is another fun character, and I do love, that Percoy's in there and Henry and Anne are in there. But I want to just point out we have the Lord of Misrule. And so I'd like to hear from both of you. So, Laura, I'm going to start with you again. How did you decide to bring in the Lord of Misrule to kind of cause a little bit of chaos and a little bit of fun with this historic couple we know so well, and they have some serious things? So how did you decide on bringing in the Lord of Misrule?
So I was mimicking the original poem, and I wanted to try to make it a little bit recognizable here and there. And so in the original one, Saint Nick comes, and that's the sound they hear. Well, the Lord of Misrule is as close as we can get, I think, in Tudor times.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he's also quite fun. So it works perfectly for, I don't want to say a children's story, but a storybook, a family-friendly kind of feel-good. I've got this picture here.
Yes.
The Lord of Misrule, and his face is so perfectly captured. I'll just kind of mention it now because one of the things we were talking about when we were talking about illustrating him, was I kept thinking when I was writing it, and when I was kind of talking to Kathryn when she was getting ready to draw and that sort of thing, I kept thinking of Sir Tony Robinson. Is that?
That's great.
As Baldric in Blackadder, because he's just that perfect mix of that character everybody loves. And he's just a little bit quirky and funny. And I think it came across really well. And right here in the face, I think you can really kind of see that come across.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you shared that, because you do see someone who's trying really hard and is a little quirky and a little funny in the way that is carried out.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So, Kathryn, tell us a little bit about bringing that character to life. So, Laura's brought the Lord of Misrule with some of the details that she includes of what he's doing in this story. So, tell us a little bit about deciding on purple or deciding on the costume and everything.
Yeah, I started with a few sketches. He was always sort of looking like this, but we narrowed it down because Laura also did a ton of research on what he might have looked like and what he was wearing. And visually, I wanted to make him purple to counter the other characters. I didn't want him to be the same colors. And I thought purple is kind of a good color for royalty, but is that accurate? And apparently, in some sources, it was. I mean, he was supposed to be mimicking the king. So in that case, it was okay to be wearing ermine and purple. And then I think just in general, he's so quirky that to me, it's like a Danny Kaye character. Like it's like spry little guy. And I wanted his expressions to be happy, but also scared and just kind of this like sprite-like character throughout. Yeah. And then Laura, I don't know, I forget how we did this, but you had written bells on the hose, but you found sources as well that he would have had bells on his hose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool that it was in the rhyme and then we drew it and we're like, great.
Yeah, because I think I had read it and then I couldn't remember where I was like, did I really read this? Because you read something years before and I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
And then I had to figure out it. And then I'm like, oh, better fact check that.
Yeah.
Go back
to he was wearing a cape at some point. I don't know if he has a cape in this one, but we really tried a bunch of different looks and this was the winner. So
yeah, we did have a cape and then he lost it.
He did. Well, it wasn't much with all of his own props.
I can't remember.
Yeah. He has a lot to keep track of.
Yeah.
So you both have mentioned working together. And this is one of the things I often wonder about an author and an illustrator. How much do you work together on the project? And do you go back and forth with things? So we know the project started with Laura because she told us a little bit about that. But how did you bring Kathryn in and how did you guys work together?
Well, I originally, okay, well.
You messaged me on Instagram.
I did, but I've got to, do you want a kind of an interesting special story?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, actually, when I originally wrote it, and it was years before, I think it was a year, at least a year, maybe 2 years before I even did anything with it. It was just sitting on my computer. I didn't even know Kathryn at all, really. I just saw a few of your posts here and there. And I think it was mostly some of the Tudor stuff, but some of the other fandoms you do. I just had this feeling, and it was like an overwhelming feeling that I'm like, I don't know. I feel like Kathryn is supposed to illustrate this. And it was so strong. And I thought, but I don't know this person. And like, I have no idea. I just couldn't shake it. And then anyways, we had another illustrator and at one point, and she's very talented, but had to back out for health reasons. And then I said, oh, well, you know what? I've had this strange feeling for a long time. I'm going to just approach Kathryn, who I didn't know at all, I'm going to just throw it out there and see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, as one does. And yeah, it worked out perfectly. The timing too. You had said if I had contacted you earlier, it wouldn't have worked out because
Yeah,
of
I was
pre-engagements, and it was just the perfect time. It was so strange.
It
So
was, and I was looking to grow at the time, my children's book portfolio and skills, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on this because I hadn't had the opportunity to draw this kind of style before, really, for a whole book. And it was just like, this is the perfect opportunity. So it was great timing for sure. Yeah.
it was good. And then I think we work well together. I think maybe I'm a lot sometimes.
No, we
Not a
work
lot, just I get a
together.
lot of ideas really quick.
I think we're a good balance. And that's a lot of it is like, we did do a lot of brainstorming. I did very few sketches, I would say. Laura was so trusting, and that gives an artist so much confidence that I think then I was able to present ideas confidently. I don't know. She's just so nice too. No, because you were just so positive that the whole thing was fun. And then that's when it works. If it's forced, it's harder, but if it's fun, you can tell. And I think in this book, you can tell we had fun.
I really do believe too, like you have to trust people. You let everybody do what they do best. You do illustrations best, so you do that, right?
It was great.
When too many people put their hands in it, sometimes like as an artist too, there's this overwhelming feeling of, oh my goodness, I know this is right. This is what's going to happen. Oh, it's going to be good. You get that feeling, right? You kind of have to trust it. And if someone comes in and goes, oh, well, I want it to look a different way, I want to change it, and the product doesn't always end up as nice, right? So yeah, I'm like, you do it. You know what you're doing. I trust you.
Well, and I think the fun definitely comes through because there's such a great match between the illustrations and the language because you've trusted each other, and the fun really comes through. So there is this wonderful story, but I want to talk about some of the other things that are in the book in addition to the story. All right. So we have, I love this in a little nutshell. We have the Tudor dynasty with a little mouse reading about the dynasty. So you can get a sense of the history, which is great. And I absolutely love the family tree. Now, the Tudor family is a lot. I mean, lots of wives and children and cousins and people becoming monarchs. And so having it spread out, how did you decide to put the family tree in the book? Because I think that's so great to see it there. Even though what we really hear about in the story is Henry and Anne, it really puts it in context to see sort of the whole family. So how did you decide to do that?
So I think it became apparent to me. So writing the story and then coming up with all these recipes and games and everything like that, that it was coming together. I always had this visual in my mind of whether it was true or not. I always had a visual of a grandmother reading to her grandchildren, and that image just kept me going because I'm a bit of a nervous introvert, in case you can't tell, and that just kept me going because it was just such a loving image. And I thought, oh, if I can make even one person in the world feel that, then that's excellent. But not everybody knows Tudor history, and if someone in the family really loves Tudor history and wants to share that with someone else, it's kind of nice to keep it all organized. So I thought, okay, some of my own family too. I have a niece who really wanted to read it. She doesn't really know a lot about Tudor history, but so, okay, here's an overview. Then you can work together, right? And you can read with your children if you wanted to. And the family tree just puts everything in perspective. And then being a very literal person, I liked the idea and asked Kathryn, could you somehow make it an actual tree? Because I just remember doing those projects in grade school where you do your family tree, but they were always on actual trees. But it just seemed so lovely with roots and growing. And it's called family tree for a reason, right?
Right. So look at that. It's beautiful. And you have little images of everybody. So it's really easy to get a sense of that. So Kathryn, tell us a little bit about illustrating the family tree, because one of the things you do, so in the story, we've talked about the three main characters. There are some others, but the king and the queen, and then the Lord of Misrule. But in the family tree, you have a lot of different members of the Tudor family, like all of the wives. So how did you differentiate them in the illustrations? Because you look at them and you know just who it is you're looking at. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. This tree is, we started off with another tree that was so elaborately a tree, and we tried to make it so complicated, but we ended up making it confusing even for ourselves. We might use it on another project someday. But it was fun to look at these portraits and try to pinpoint what about the portrait is the most recognizable piece. So it becomes a little bit of a caricature, a little bit of a cartoon version. And then, of course, labeling them was crucial. We obviously couldn't include everyone. This is not this is the core, but we could make it 20 pages, obviously. We planned it that way. And then we also neurotically checked the birth and death dates of all of them like 25 times, right? And we were like,
Oh, yeah.
over and over again, checking. These have to be right, which some of them are still not, you don't know for some of them. So,
right.
But yeah, in terms of I used to do book design, and one of my interiors when I worked at Random House, and one of them was family trees for some of those historical fiction books out there. So I was used to doing the lines and how things meet up visually, but to be able to add the artwork is so helpful and such a nice little element to really put together who these people were. So yeah.
And I love how you said, researching the thing about them that makes them recognizable. Because if you just glance at it, I know right away, oh yeah, that's Mary Queen of Scots, even before I read it, because that's a portrait I've seen of her. Or I can see Anne Boleyn. We've already talked about her because she's always got the B. So there are things that you've brought out. So we feel very comfortable, those of us who know the story. And as I am the grandma reading to her granddaughters, it's easy for me to point to and say, this is Anne of Cleves. She came from a different country. Do you see how her headdress looks a little different than the others? So it's a great tool to be a teaching tool in a really, really fun way. So we know there's the story, we know there's this, but there are also some activities. So I want to, under the title of entertainment, there are a lot of activities you could do with your family members over the holidays or any other time, but especially over the holidays. So you've got a house full of people. So I wanted to ask both of you, which activities were your favorite, either to think about or to actually do, or to write about or illustrate or whatever. So what are some of your favorite activities from the book?
Well, for me, I had fun creating a lot of the recipes, especially the biggest challenge was I say challenge, but it was actually the most fun, was to create the idea of the 4 and 20 blackbirds baked into a pie, because this is the Tudor grandeur that, I don't know, it just appeals so much to a lot of people. And it's just like, oh, wow, but how can I achieve this Tudor grandeur in my own home?
So there you go.
I'm not going to bake a bunch of birds into a pie, that's for sure. And I thought that this was really cute. And I think it's maybe I do a lot of doll housing and things too. And so I think that translated to the baking idea, to put these little birds into a pie with jam and shortbread. And then you can put the little noses on with almonds. Anyway, so that was just one that I found the most fun to do. For the activities, I would say the ghost stories, oddly enough, for us, because our household is one that loves Halloween a lot, and I love Christmas too, but I'm a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to ghost stories. Even though I love them and I can't get enough of them, I have to read them in the daytime. But at Christmas, you're surrounded in the evening by these warm twinkle lights, right? And it's cozy and it's nice. And they used to tell ghost stories. I don't quite understand why. Even the 1950s had the that movie. I say have to watch, but I used to secretly just love watching that black and white movie, Ebenezer Scrooge with Alistair Sim. Is it the 1951?
Yes.
The Ghosts of Christmas Past visiting, and that's you've seen kind of see all those ghosts kind of disappear from modern Christmas. I'm wondering if it has something to do with the rise in the commercialism with Halloween, because everybody likes to label and put that's Halloween, that's Christmas. But I do kind of want, if anything I could, I'd like to bring that those ghost stories right on through to Christmas. That would be my favorite. So that would be my favorite tradition.
And that's a nice thing to the ghost stories were a part of a Christmas celebration and gathering the family around. And so, yes, you're right. It also seems lighter in the evening when the tree is all lit and there are all the twinkle lights all around. It's a little less scary to tell ghost stories at night. So that's great. All right, Katie, what about you? What activities did you enjoy?
I enjoyed all these activities. I think in general, my family leans toward games, game night, by the wood stove, playing card games. And we enjoyed the Heir and the Spare card game quite a bit. It's easy to follow. It's not too complicated. So my kids play it and they have fun with it. But I can't take credit for any of these activities or recipes. This is so Laura. While I was doing the drawings, the other thing is she was so busy writing the rest of the book that she was like, yeah, you do you.
But see, that's a great team, right? And that is great. And so, yes, Laura came up. So I just want to mention, because I love this idea, the secret messages at Christmas. And so you could write a little secret message to someone in your family, and it talks about how, and keeping secrets was a big part of Tudor time and Christmas and all of that. So in addition to activities, and Laura has mentioned, one of the traditions in Tudor times was gifts were given not on Christmas Day, which was actually a very religious day for going to church and often several times a day, but on New Year's Day. And so that is one of the Tudor traditions. So I was just wondering if either of you, but it is gift giving, which is still a tradition, but it was on New Year's. So if either of you have tried in your families, maybe giving gifts on New Year's, or is there something special that you do on New Year's? Because the holiday just keeps going. Kids are usually out of school the week in between. Sometimes work stops the week in between. So what kinds of things can we continue to do even after Christmas Day to keep the holiday spirit going?
Okay, well, something just popped in my head when you were asking that question, and I think it's kind of funny. So a lot of the Tudor gift giving traditions was to give a glove, and inside would be often money or coins, this kind of thing. Well, I made a joke. It'd be funny to I think it's like the Mr. Bean episode when he has the sock hung and he puts the other sock inside, and then on Christmas morning he has a pair of socks. I kind of want to do that with gloves, and I was thinking to my kids, because we can never find our matching pairs.
Oh, that's good.
Really funny New Year's tradition. Here's a gift. It's a glove stuffed with another glove, and now you have a pair that matches.
Oh, that's great. And the idea of stuffing things, like that's how they used to cook stuff. So that's good. That's good. Oh
yeah, sometimes kind of gross too.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a fun, and that would be a fun New Year's tradition, especially if you live somewhere where it's cold and snowy. That would be great. Katie, how about you? Any fun New Year's? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we probably, if it's Tudor related, it's probably just the revelry. We love staying up late and celebrating the music, and I hate having the holidays come to a close. So we try to go to the very end and celebrate as much as we can. And then there's also another tradition we do, and I don't know what this comes from, but it's like the nut in the porridge. Is that?
Oh yeah.
Like a lucky thing where you find I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know where it comes from, but.
Well, so in different traditions, so sometimes it's a bean or a nut, or sometimes even a coin, although you have to be careful with teeth. And often, not in the royal household where the Lord of Misrule was hired and paid, but in some other households, whoever got the nut or the bean baked in the whatever was the Lord of Misrule for the day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so sometimes, and so now it may be the lucky person, or you get the first choice of whatever. But those traditions kind of do travel I did go through some of the household accounts during Tudor times in Henry VIII's reign, and he sometimes had the same Lord of Misrule 2 or 3 years in a row, and there was money paid to the Lord of Misrule. And so they weren't taking chances that it wasn't going to be the person the king wanted. So I don't know whether they gave him specifically the plate with a nut in it, or they just told him ahead of time, you're the Lord of Misrule. We know in Elizabeth's reign, there was at least 1 year that Robert Dudley was the Lord of Misrule and in charge of all the gift giving. So that you can imagine that she got really good gifts from him over and over. Now, Laura mentioned that you do doll houses, and there are some images in here. I'm just looking while I'm asking you the question. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because you have some really fun images of Tudors in doll houses and how you got interested in that, because they do make some appearances.
Yeah, so during the pandemic time, I say pandemic-y time normally, it just sounds lighter, but I had bought a dollhouse, like a used one at Farm Fresh is the word that comes to mind. My family thought it was, why are you buying this? And I'm like, I can see it. I can see it. And anyways, then the world shut down and I had this dollhouse and limited craft supplies. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start decorating. I'm going to do a Tudor house. And I started researching and trying to see different historical things. And I have a friend, I'm lucky to have lots of artist friends, and I have a local artist friend who does the peg dolls. And I asked her if she could do Henry and all 6 wives because I wanted to put them in the dollhouse. And she, I sent her portraits and she did them, and they turned out so cute and I loved it. And it was just such a serious, sad, kind of scary time for the world, I think. And so whatever reason, I started doing Tudor comics with these peg dolls and posing them in the dollhouse and just having kind of a blast with it, right? I think that's actually why Henry and Anne maybe come across kind of lighter and more fun. I see them as characters almost for these comics, and you kind of have to balance humor that way. But anyways, yeah, I love doing the dollhouses, and I didn't have access to stores during that time. So a lot of the stuff would be from whatever I had lying around the house, just being inventive and trying to make the most of it. But this is actually very Tudor themed as well.
Yes.
Right? Just reduce, reuse, recycle kind of attitude.
Right. No, I think that's great and a good reminder. And that can be, a family tradition as well, to look around and decorate with what's there and go outside and decorate with what's there, because that is what the Tudors did.
For sure.
So the other thing I want to mention from the book, so you get some views of a little taste of the dolls in the book, but you've mentioned the baking, and I can't let you go. I know the 4 and 20 blackbirds, but I have to show the peacock, because the gingerbread cookies, step by step of how to make this gorgeous display. And although the Tudors might not have done it this way, one of the things the Tudors really did is display their food in magnificent ways. That's one of the ways they demonstrated that it's a special meal, a special time, a special feast, is the display. So talk us through the gingerbread peacock cookie magnificent display, because I have to admit I've not tried it, but it just looks spectacular.
Oh, thank you. So I had to have peacock. That wasn't for negotiation. Peacock with the dollhouse was kind of a running joke too. I have a funny little handmade one, and Henry was always grabbing his peacock. Okay, I won't. But it's a bit, and the peacock just had to. When you learn about how they actually did it historically too, stuffing it back into its live skin, like cooked, and then propping it up, and sometimes they would even insert like a flame throwing device kind of sort of thing into its beak, so it looked like it was breathing fire. Wow. So no to that. That's not going to be something that we do in our kitchen. I'll probably light the house on fire anyways and get food poisoning. So I was trying to think of how to do this, but that spicy element, I thought, well, that would pair well with gingerbread. And so it shows the steps, and it's not as hard as it looks. The hardest part, I'd say, is just the patience with the piping the icing. but it's all in steps, so you can do it very easily. But it's slice and bake cookies. And so there's a trick to roll the gingerbread dough into a log. But then if you put pressure on each side, you make a tear shape. And that allows you to make all the feathers when you bake it, and to a couple little cuts, helps you form the head as well for the peacock. And then it's just decorating it. And I've done it a few times, but it is a little bit of work, but it's not going to end you, I don't think, for patience level in the kitchen.
Well,
it's simple.
It is, and really the directions are very clear and walk you right through, and so you can see how to shape the head and how to do it all. But you're right, peacocks and the presentation of peacocks, and then they would eat peacocks. But it is a good decision for us today to instead have this magnificent peacock gingerbread cookie that we can then eat. But the idea of this beautiful, not just a beautiful haul, but the beautiful food, I thought that was such a wonderful way. You know, the blackbird with the little beaks in the pie, and this beautiful, there are all kinds of other recipes, but the peacock cookie, gingerbread cookie extravaganza is just so wonderful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just think that's a good way. Sorry, I was trying to think how to do grandeur, but like in an accessible way. And I think it really does, like from my experience, when you put a plate on the table and it looks like a peacock,
yes,
you're going to get the same kind of wows as if you had a real peacock, except without, like I say, without the food poisoning.
Yeah, and even better wows, because it's really edible. But but the idea of that is a Tudor idea, right? To have this magnificent, take your breath away appearance, as well as, you know, the deliciousness of it. So then at the end of the book, there are some resources and just some great things, some places you can learn more. It's all about learning, which I really love. Books you can turn to, some online resources, and I will thank you because podcasts are mentioned, including this one. But I am so excited. The book's been out for a couple of years, but if you don't have it, this is one of the highlights of my holiday season with my grandchildren, and not just grandchildren. My adult niece is in town for the holidays this year. She's already here. She's a travel nurse, so she's spending the whole holiday with us. But this book is already out and we're looking at it. So I just want to thank you both and ask you both if you're working on something else, if you imagine another collaboration down the road where we can find you and learn more about you. And this time, let's start with Kathryn, because I keep calling on Laura first. It seems only fair. We start with Kathryn this time. So what else are you working on? I know you're both working on other things because I see them, but what else are you working on, Kathryn? And where can we find you and all of that?
Sure. Yeah, I am working on a few different things. I'm always expanding my literary collection. You can find me mostly on my website, KathrynHoleman.com. That's going to take you everywhere else. I'm not so great about social media these days. I'm trying to be better. But yeah, generally you can find me there. I just finished doing this playing card deck, which is another fun portraiture project, kind of like the caricatures that I did for the book. So that's my most recent project. And Laura and I are always in touch, and we are always thinking ahead to how can we do something again. So yeah. Over to you.
My fingers are crossed because I think that would be wonderful.
You know what I'm going. Yeah. There's been thoughts about maybe doing like a ghost themed Tudor book, but I don't know. So maybe tone down a little bit, some memento mori, that
yeah,
interesting fun facts, but probably we'll see. Maybe in the future. For right now, I'm working. I actually just sent the latest version off to some beta readers, so hopefully that's coming through. It's a funny, lighter read for adults. I hope that translates. It's called In Praise of Tudor, 100 Eccentric Tudor Solutions for a Modern Life.
Oh, wow.
But I really dug deep into some interesting sources to pull out some really weird and wacky facts and applied it to how you can just be a little bit more eccentric and fun. So,
Well,
which
they
I
did
have no
some
problem
crazy
doing.
things. That sounds fabulous. Oh, I can't wait. Okay. So can you share just one crazy thing?
Oh, just what's popping to mind that it connects to actually to Twas, because the fasting line I said there, when Anne's so excited because she can smell roasting meat. All I could think of is what I recently was reading about how Erasmus, he got a he would get dispensations to avoid eating fish. And I thought that was kind of funny because I live in a house of people who do not eat fish. And so when I wrote that line about she could smell roasting meat after fasting for weeks, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, if you lived back then and you were forced to eat fish all the time and you really didn't like fish, that would be a very difficult time. So yeah,
Yeah.
but there's just some odd ones. Like there's a great solution if you don't like making your bed,
Oh.
and that is there's a treatise that was written in the 1500s by a Father Noel, and it's a treatise on ghosts. You can sense a theme with me today. But yeah, if you didn't make your bed, you were opening yourself up to a risk of an incubus coming in there, or incubi.
Ooh.
So you don't want visitors like that at night. So if you make your bed in the morning, you should be safe.
Okay. So that's a great way to not have arguments with your kids. Just let them know ghosts, if monsters,
You don't
maybe.
want anybody taking up residence in there. You sleep with one eye open. Get a better night's sleep if you make your bed. That's for sure.
Well, that's fabulous. And, people still say you get a better night's sleep if you make your bed. So maybe that's what they're referring to. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. I'm holding it up once more. I'll have all the information in the show notes with your websites and everything else. But thank you so much. First of all, thank you for creating this marvelous book, which is such a great holiday tradition in my house. And thank you for joining us to share with us some of the behind the scenes of how you work together and how you came up with these wonderful ideas. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
It's been delightful. And thank you all for joining us. Hope you are having a wonderful holiday season and enjoy your Tudor Christmas all together. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of Royals, Rebels, and Romantics, and have a happy history holiday.